Hey guys, today we're going to take a couple minutes and we're going to talk about a couple of important concepts that are vital to us in understanding the Industrial Revolution and even the 20th century and then the 21st century as it comes later. And so the first concept that we're going to focus on is something called capitalism. Capitalism is an economic theory, and there's no place in your notes for this, but capitalism is an economic theory in which it is the idea that you should accumulate or be allowed to gather as much capital or money as possible, and that you should be free to do so. Capitalism is an idea that stems out of the Enlightenment, the notions of freedom and equality, and that we're all equal and free to do whatever we want in terms of gathering wealth. And so this is the economic theory coming out of the Enlightenment. Capitalism was early encouraged by mercantilism. If you remember, mercantilism is the idea that one, country should protect their own economies; two, that countries should gather as much bullion or hard actual cash wealth, gold, as much as possible, and that having more of that in your bank or in your country made you more wealthy. So similar to mercantilism, capitalism is a belief in the accumulation of wealth and money, but in a slightly different form. Mercantilist theory said you should gather and hold on to as much gold bullion or silver bullion as possible. Well, capitalism meant that you should try to accumulate as much general wealth. So there's a little bit of a change, not in that wealth is really any different, but it's not the actual gold hard currency that is the wealth. The early forebears or the early forefathers of capitalism were the factory owners, as we talked about during the urban game that we played. These initial guys, these factory owners that gathered wealth and were able to had money to begin with, invested that money into building factories and then made more money and tried to find more efficient ways of creating whatever product they wanted. We'll take cloth and textiles to begin with, so that they could make more money. Those initial factory owners were the capitalists. They were trying to accumulate as much capital or wealth as possible. And the whole notion of capitalism is that you should gain wealth. Now remember, the notion of the factory owners was, and anybody starting a business, is to make money. That's their entire purpose, is to make money. And so the factory owners were going to do whatever it took to make them and their companies the most money. And so we're going to talk about the effects of that later, but the goals of the factory owners were to gather wealth and to make money. In order to make money, you had to lower your operating cost, and you had to spend as little money on other things, including paying your workers, including things like the working conditions. You had to spend as little money otherwise so that you could make a lot of money. Now, they'll get into some different conversations later, but right now that's what we're thinking about. Is we're thinking about lowering your operating costs so that you can make as much money as possible. The main supporter of capitalism is a guy named Adam Smith. Adam Smith is an Enlightenment philosopher. Adam Smith wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations, and in The Wealth of Nations he says that the way that a government and that an economy can grow, the government can allow and become the strongest that it can, and that the way that a nation can be strong is by taking a complete hands-off approach to its economy. One of the underlying tenets of true capitalism is a belief in what's called laissez-faire economics, or hands-off. That means the government has very little to do with the economy. This is different than mercantilism. Under mercantilism, the goal is to protect your economy. That means high tariffs. That means protecting your nation's industries. That means forcing people within your country to buy goods that are made within your country. Whereas under Adam Smith said that Adam Smith took a little bit different take on it. He said under laissez-faire economics, the government took a hands-off approach. The government said, we're not going to tax things. We are going to let the government and the economy sort itself out. Adam Smith is a big proponent of the natural laws of supply and demand, which we've already talked about in this class. And so those are the ideas from Adam Smith. One, in his book, The Wealth of Nations, countries can accumulate the most wealth and become the most healthy by allowing its people to have as much free reign or free trade within their government or country as possible economically. Capitalism really meant competition for money. That was the entire goal. So who can accumulate the most wealth? Who can gain the most money? Again, governments played a hands-off approach. This is when we begin to see a push for lower taxes. This is when we begin to see a push for lower tariffs or trade barriers. This is when we begin to see factory owners trying to gain as much money as possible. And here we go. Here are the effects that capitalism has on the working class. The number one effect is this that you have to keep in mind, is that the factory owner's goal was to make money. Now, that's not to say they were jerks. That's not to say they were bad people, but their goal was to make money. And sometimes this meant paying your workers a very low wage. Sometimes this meant providing unsafe working conditions. And so the effects on the working class was that their wages went down. The environment, as a byproduct of the working class, the environment was negatively affected. You see here in the cartoon all the smoke coming out. Again, factory owners were concerned with that. And also, to speak on their behalf, it wasn't that they knew what they were doing to the environment until much later. An example you can see of that today is China is going through its own sort of industrial revolution, and the effects on their environment are negative. The difference is they know a little bit more about what they're doing to the environment, whereas today, or in the 1800s, 1800s, the effects on the environment and even the working class weren't fully seen. So I want you to think about the urban game and how the working class would have been affected living in the tenements, not being paid a very high wage, and how those factory owners were gaining wealth and the lives of the working class changed. We'll also talk about that, and you guys talked about that in your presentations today in class. All right, watch this video tonight. Oh, wait, you already did. Have a great day. Have a great election day, and I'll see you